Hi everyone, I'm Sam Elfrey, and this is my cat on me. And I'm going to be talking about Wikipedia and how you can use it in your academic work. So Wikipedia, has been really controversial in the past when it comes to whether or not you should use it in your classes, whether you're in high school or college. There is a lot of trepidation from your teachers and professors about whether or not Wikipedia is a good source to use. And, you know, we'll talk about the reasons why you might use it and the reasons why your teachers might be a little hesitant about it. And therefore, if you use it correctly, it can be a really useful tool for your research. Wikipedia is one of the first things that's going to pop up in a Google result, right? So in some ways, if you're not taking your topic to Google and seeing what's out there already, kind of the baseline information about a topic, I would think you're not really doing a full investigation into the topic. So you really want to be Googling your topic. You want to be Googling, you want to be reading Wikipedia, you want to be like fully engaged in what's already out there. And that is a baseline, right? That's not exactly what you're going to then be taking and writing into your homework assignment or your essay or whatever you're working on in your courses. You want to use this as foundational information to then find better sources and the scholarship in the field. And then those are the sources that you're going to be using in your academic work. So let's kind of go into that distinction and talk about the benefits of Wikipedia and avoiding what makes people nervous about Wikipedia. Okay, so you see on my screen right now that we have Wikipedia open. I'm sure not many people have even seen this view of Wikipedia because you know, it's the main page, and you don't really land on the main page ever. When you're going to Wikipedia, you're probably landing on the article itself. So say I'm working on a paper about Renaissance Italy, and I want to talk about um, sculpture and art during the Renaissance, right? There's a couple different things you can work on from this point. You could be, you know, looking up very specific works of art if you know them and you have them in mind. You could be researching specific names of artists or people that were patroning the arts during that time because you know their name. But say you don't know what or who or where you want to be talking about. You're just not sure of the details yet, but you just know Renaissance Italy is like the big topic you want to talk about, and you want to get more specific. So that is a place in which Wikipedia really comes in handy. So I could just type in Renaissance and click on that. And here, the Wikipedia article really comes in handy in this very broad encyclopedic way because you're able to use it as an encyclopedia. And I'm kind of guessing that a lot of students today probably never used encyclopedias. So that kind of information is often like the very broad stuff that's in here that broadly refers to a time period or birthdays or death dates or birth locations, parents, like this kind of very factual information. You don't often need to source that unless it is controversial in some ways. But if it's like straight up fact, like the Renaissance was a period in European history marking the transition from the Middle Ages to modernity and covering the 15th and 16th centuries. That's just fact. Don't copy it verbatim from an article, but if you were to say the Renaissance was during the 15th and 16th centuries, you might not have known that before reading this article. You might have had an idea, but you might not have like known, okay, 15th and 16th century, and that bit of information might have been new to you, and you might want to cite it because of that. But there's not really a need to do that because it is generally understood, and it's generally, it's just fact. So as you see, that sentence does not have a citation next to it because it doesn't need it. But for the information that does have citations, that's the information that you want to be really careful around. So as you see, there's a few sources down here, and as you hover over them, you get the citation information of author and date and title and publisher. And so that sentence, right, says that the traditional view focuses more on the early modern aspects of the Renaissance and argues that it was a break from the past. So that, right? It's an argument, right? So it's kind of, the language is kind of there that it's somebody's argument. So you're kind of getting the sense like, okay, there's going to be a citation. And because if it's an argument, there's a debate, and that involves scholarship, that involves real people talking, discussing, arguing. Many historians today focus more on its medieval aspects and argue that it was an extension of the Middle Ages. Many historians, right? So we're getting this more of this language that there's a conversation and a dialogue going on, and so then there's a citation. So if you were reading this article and that piece of information that there's this debate going on is news to you, you have to acknowledge the citations if that's what you're going to be using. So in Wikipedia, you can just click on the 4 or the 5, and it'll jump you down to the citation itself. So here, 4 and 5, we have 2 books by 2 different authors at 2 different times. They're completely separate sources, but clearly they both kind of talk about this issue. If the Renaissance is the Middle Ages, if it's a debate, like that conversation can probably be found in these 2 books. So what you have to do is you have to go read the book. So you can't just cite it and say, okay, well, I found it via Wikipedia, but if I wanted to know more, it would be in these sources. It's not going to be good enough for your teachers and your professors. You have to locate the book in your library. And I have a video on ebooks that I will link alongside this video. But you need to locate these materials and start to unpack the conversation and get direct quotes from the authors and really, acknowledge their argument, acknowledge the work that they've done so that you can, say that you did your due diligence in finding this information and you're pulling it in to your own argument. And maybe you agree with one author and maybe you disagree with another author. So you can kind of put these in dialogue to use as evidence to support your point, or to use, and say, I'm acknowledging that this opinion exists, but like, I don't like it because of whatever reason. So another way you can use Wikipedia is in this table of contents, and not all articles have it. They're all a little different. You're able to go down to references, and then we have the citations, which we talked about last time, but under the citations, you have a couple more categories: more sources and further reading. So this is the stuff that might not have been directly quoted and referenced in the Wikipedia article itself, but it's material that is useful to the topic in general and highly recommended. So all of this is really great information, and it's great to use this as a jumping off point for your research. Below that, you have external links, interactive resources, lectures and galleries, and then down here, it links it to broader movements, locations, time periods. So the Wikipedia article itself is really robust and can point you to something else that you can use in your research. But without this, you're at square one, right? So it really does help give you a leg up in finding more information. Keep in mind that anything written in this Wikipedia article is easily searchable on Google. So what that means is if you do copy something verbatim, right? If you like highlight and Control C and Control V into your paper, It is very apparent and easy to find that it will link back to the Wikipedia article. Even in Wikipedia's case, you don't want to put it in quotes because you don't know who's writing it. You can't attribute it to a specific author, and therefore you really can't use this word for word. You have to, go to the original source, find the original source, or rephrase it in a way with attribution that allows you to write your paper without any, concern about plagiarism because it will be your own work. So just be wary of that it can be very easy to find if you take anything word for word from here. So just something to avoid and be very careful about. Remember that Wikipedia is not something to fear. Um, a lot of academics and scholars today really use Wikipedia and contribute to Wikipedia. So something really interesting here is that you can go to View History up here at the top, and this is all of the contributions to the Wikipedia article. So something like Renaissance is going to have, probably thousands of people contributing to the topic in little ways. So if anything is controversial in it, you can actually find out who contributed, and you can go to their talk page by clicking on their name. And you could learn a little bit about who's creating this material, some credibility to Wikipedia, because a lot of people, they really champion the idea of information being free and available outside of paywalls. So that's why this tool really exists, is to give you information for free. So it's a really great resource that a lot of people really champion and really stand up for, and they really want it to be honest, credible, good information. It's a starting ground. It should be, one of the first steps you do in research before you go deeper. It helps, affirm what you know. It helps contextualize it within a time, a place, a people. It might bring you to some debates and controversies and new modes of thinking that you hadn't considered before. So I highly recommend using Wikipedia. And if you have any questions, please reach out and we can talk more about Wikipedia and how information wants to be free and available.